Good. I'd like to call to order the Brandywine Heights School District School Board meeting for October 5th, 2020. Start time is 6:07. Everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Weaver?
Here.
Dr. Carter?
Here.
Mrs. Eisenhart? Here. Mrs. Henry? Here. Mrs. Hume? Here. Mr. Sheets?
Mr. Sheets has another obligation, he was not able to come tonight.
Mr. Wagman?
Here.
Mrs. Wallitzer? Here. Mr. Tomasi?
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start out with recognition, something light, something fun, one of my most favorite things to do. Today we have 2 recognitions for the New Heights Award recipients. Brooke Ott, is Ms. Ott here? And Ms. Ott, please come down.
So we have some visitors to the meeting this evening. I figured I'd just share a little bit about what the New Heights Award is. It's kind of like the Employee of the Month. So we have a recognition program within the school district where students, families, staff members can recognize staff members who are doing great things. And we typically about 30 individuals a month are recognized, and then out of those 30, we pick 2 top individuals. And so this month we get to recognize Ms. Ott as one of our top recipients. So congratulations, Ms. Ott.
Mrs. Ott, congratulations.
Thank you.
And you are, tell us your role again?
Registrar and transportation.
Okay, very good. So I have 2 amazing, this is awesome. These are just great little blurbs. I need to read those. So I'm going to start with the first one. This person says, this girl is a rock star, new to a position and performing miracles. She's taking on a lot and still responds to all inquiries with a smile. That's the first one. The second one, Brooke has been extremely helpful the past few weeks of school. Her communication is excellent while registering new students. This is paramount for getting students assigned to homerooms and having them start as soon as possible. She's a great asset to our Brandywine team. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I'll say a little bit about Brooke. We started in January, I think, right? So transportation, if you're not aware, it's a pretty tough role on a normal day. So Brooke started in January. We had a vacancy in that position. So she came in, her predecessor wasn't here. And I think it was your second day we threw you into training with the software provider, TransFinder, that does all of the bus routing. And I was so impressed on Brooke's second day how she really took hold of knowledge of that software and jumped right into the position. So she did a great job and was going along merrily. And about 8 weeks into it, March 13th, we shut schools down for 2 weeks, and things have not been normal since then. Brooke really shined this summer. Normally in the summertime, it's a little more casual on the administrative side, and take our time and kind of get bus routes and things like that figured out. And, ideally that would have been perfect for someone who was new into the position and routing buses for the first time. But unfortunately, this summer was unlike any other summer we've had. And there's a couple things that really stacked the odds against Brooke in her first time routing all of our buses. One, we had a major IT change with eSchool, and eSchool interfaces into a lot of our other systems. So Brooke had to navigate through that and the impact on TransFinder. And then as everyone on the board is well aware, obviously, as we came into the school year, we were not quite sure exactly what the school year was going to look like. So Brooke was waiting for, those additional decisions. And once we had those, she had to jump right in and really not just do one route for the district, but essentially do at least 3 cohorts of students for routing, plus all of the other out-of-district placements and non-public routes as well. So Brooke really shined. It's great to hear other folks nominating her for this position. position. Those of us that work closely with her, you know, we see it every day, what she brings to the district. It's great to see those in other areas of the district recognize it as well. It's a real compliment to you. And all you have to do is spend a couple minutes with Brooke and you realize she's an extremely positive person. You can't tell under the mask, but she 9 times out of 10 has a smile on her face. But again, transportation, if you're smiling and you're doing transportation, that's very unusual. So Brooke brings a great positive attitude to the business office, and it's a testament. There's a few business office employees here as well, Beth Ann and Catherine, here to support Brooke and her family as well in getting this award, and I couldn't be prouder of you and the work you've done to get us going this start of the school year. So thank you.
Absolutely. We're gonna get a snap a picture. I know it's not like COVID safe, so maybe we'll step aside here, and then you just want to get one with Mr. Nyman?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. If you can see, here we go. One, serious back up. Great smile, guys. Great smile. Yeah. Maybe we'll do
Ever
it.
since I started this position, I feel like I've been welcomed into being a part of the family, and it's just a very wonderful, positive environment. I'm really thankful to be here. Thank you so much.
It honestly is a blessed time to be here. You can tell by Brooke, that's what I'm gonna say about her spot. She's a smart lady, she's super organized, super efficient, does awesome at her job, but you can tell even by her without her mask, but she's always smiling, always positive. Such a great subject. Thank you for everything.
And next we have Mr. Riggins. Mr. Riggins, can you please come down? All right, Mr. Riggins, these are the great things. Congratulations, sir. All right. So number one, person says, I commend the efforts of Tony in engaging students while building relationships and focusing on SEL on Wednesday mornings. These Wednesday mornings may mean more to the kiddos than anything else. Thank you for being you and making a difference. Side note, I changed my mind from the first week. A hot dog is a sandwich by definition. Does that give you a clue what that is?
Certainly.
Okay. Okay, all right, so the next one, Mr. Riggins was a rock star and helped me in a time of need. He wrote it down in his notebook, and just like that, the magic happened. Thanks for your help with a smile. Congratulations.
So Mr. Riggins has been in a number of roles for us here in the district, and it's fantastic to see because he started here as a student teacher. So he went from a student teacher to a day-to-day sub, to our building sub, to a long-term sub, to our full-time English and reading and gifted teacher, and now he's starting his second year in the Dean of Students role. And he is a tremendous asset to myself, but more importantly, he is such a tremendous asset to our students and our staff. He goes to great lengths to get to know all of our students. He is such a trusted asset and trusted resource. I think the coolest thing is, as I'm talking, I see JT nodding. He's saying this is absolutely true. He's always in the hallways. He's always helping students out. You know, as we're getting through the first couple of weeks of school, all we saw was Mr. Riggins with 2 to 3 laptops in his hands, and we're juggling and we're running from room to room to get a new laptop developed, get somewhere, and he's just so great with the staff. He has been in their shoes. He knows what everybody is going through, and he's always there to give that ear. I don't know how he has enough time in his day because he is always here, always doing things for everyone. Just a tremendous resource. And I think 2 years ago, he was here receiving this award, and students were in tears talking about how much of an influence he has made on them. We thought, wow, this is so great for the 70-some students he worked with a year at that point. And when we looked at transitioning into this Dean of Students role, we thought, now Mr. Riggins can impact every student in this building. And he has not disappointed. He is just such a tremendous, tremendous support to our students. So we say Dean of Students is a fantastic role. We know one day he's going to be a fantastic administrator for us. And Again, congratulations, Mr. Riggins. You are the best.
Thank you. So as we transition for a picture, and I'll step out of the way, but you know what Mr. Freda was saying about servant leadership, that is Tony. He is always there, connecting with people, helping people out. You've just been, it's so neat to see, and Mr. Freda said, your transition career grow, and you are making tremendous impacts on many others than what you did just in the past. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations, everyone.
Okay, we have student board representation. Let's start with Olivia. Olivia, I'm here.
Olivia's on her way from Wyoming missing. She had field hockey,
Okay,
so we might have to.
okay. Tatiana, you want to go first?
The elementary school is off to a great start. Students are getting used to the new routine and are working hard in school and during virtual sessions. In addition, preparations for Halloween have begun. Students will have the opportunity to wear their costume all day and engage in holiday-themed classroom activities in place of the usual parade and parties. The construction taking place at the elementary school has also been moving smoothly. The brand new bathrooms are in use by students and everything is hands-free. The walls of the new classrooms and gym are currently being built and coming together nicely. For me, the past few weeks with the hybrid model have been better than I anticipated. I was initially worried about the safety measures being taken, but am now a bit more at ease. I've also found I'm still able to learn in the shortened class periods and from home. From both school and home, there are different positive aspects like seeing teachers and peers in person or having a more flexible schedule. For me, overall, school has been going well.
Very nice. Thank you so much. All right, John, this is your first time? Are you nervous?
Yeah.
A little bit?
And before JT presents, just to introduce him to the board, this is JT Allmendinger. He is an 8th grade student with us. And what is truly remarkable about this young man is when we look at who would be great in this role, we look at how Tatiana jumped into this role as an 8th grader, we look for students who are well-rounded and who do a tremendous amount of things throughout our school. So JT is an incredibly academic student. He's involved in athletics. He's currently playing football. He's involved in our music program. He is a absolutely unbelievable drummer, which I could never have the rhythm to do, but he is fantastic at it. For the past 2 to 3 years, I think 3 years, he has worked with Mr. Mark in our Lego team. So every year he goes to Penn State Berks and competes in the STEM competition there. And last year, he worked on the team that presented to the Topton Borough Council about some signage that we were looking to do throughout the community. So JT is just an absolutely phenomenal example of what we aspire to for all of our students. So we're very excited to have him as our middle school, intermediate school board rep this year. So go get him, kiddo.
So starting on the 3rd grade, well, actually every grade, we are all still getting used to scheduling with hybrid schedule, online and in school. It is very different to all of us. With 4th grade, we have the UGI, gas safety assembly, but this year it's way different, so it will be happening virtually. 5th grade, we have, well, every grade we have Imagine Math, and our subject math. Every lesson we do is donating to health foundations to support them. 6th grade, again, getting used to the scheduling. 7th and 8th was BBN's first show, was also Tuesday. And band and chorus, virtual Veterans Day performance for the veterans, and slide course will be starting tomorrow with our first meet. And that's all.
Good job, JT. That was awesome.
You should give him good job, Chip.
Olivia, perfect timing. Just think
How
of
do you
you.
feel about the hybrid model? How do you give us her perspective? How do you feel?
My perspective of it is, it's simple. It's like everything's touch free. It's no contact. It's I'd rather be in school every day or all day because I'm a nerd. And some things are just, can't really do. I mean, band is way different.
Right.
That's how school is.
Olivia, are you ready?
Yes,
Put you
I
on the
am.
spot here, sorry, you just walked in.
Okay, so high school sports are up and running and we're following a COVID protocol. It's been exciting getting to play and seeing everybody else play the sports that they enjoy. And then we've had to approach senior nights differently. Normally they're at the end of the season, but this year most of them were like the first home games of the season. It's always still a great way to recognize the athletes who work so hard. Also, we're approaching homecoming differently. So we voted for our members of the court, and I think they're getting announced tomorrow and Thursday in schools. And then they will be voting for that the next week. And then our student council is working to come up with a spirit week and videos to highlight our court. I know the beginning of the school year has looked different for everybody, but it has looked especially different for me because I'm in a program that is run through PCTC. It's called Medical Health Professions. So I go to Penn State Berks 2 days out of the week and take a bioethics course. And then I go to BCTC 3 days out of the week. So those two campuses are full-time in person. So I have class and both of them end at 10. So it's really impractical for me to drive all the way back to Brandywine. I'm still enrolled in Brandywine courses with Ms. Engstat and Senora Worsing, and they are both like very accommodating and very helpful, and they're willing to work with anybody that's in this program. And it's just nice to know that we can have we can still work together even in the conditions that we're in right now.
How do you like that program?
I love it. I really enjoy it a lot.
And what do you want to be when you grow up?
I would like to, I'm going to major in nursing and then I'll work for a little bit and then I'd like to become a nurse practitioner in pediatrics.
That's awesome. Very good. Did you have a game?
Yes, we won. It was
Very nice, very nice. Great job, guys. Okay, sorry. Okay. Now, you guys can stay, you can go, there's no pressure, whatever you want to do. It gets kind of boring out of this, to be honest.
Thank you, everyone. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
I'm talking about you. Okay, so we're gonna change up the how we're doing things a little bit. I'd like to offer anyone who showed up public. I know these meetings can go on for a while, so I want to offer you folks the chance to public comment now. That way we can, if you want to stay, you can stay. If you want to go, you're free to go. But I want to offer that. But if you just want to listen, you can listen too. So I just want to offer anyone the chance who's here to public comment. And if you are going to call public comment, I just want to remind everyone that we like 5 minutes time frame here just to keep the meeting going. And also your name and your township that you live in. So I'll open it up to anyone in the public who wants to come talk. Well, you stand, sir.
Brian Holmes, Rockland Township.
Okay, thank you.
Question, is there, the last school board meeting, discussed at length. Is there any, and I can't remember if it's it's good minutes, or, is there any point or at which point will the school board address or will they look at, the number of cases per 100,000, or what metric will you be looking at to determine whether to go back to full-time, regular, in-class schooling?
So what the health and safety plan that originally was approved was to use the 50 out of 100,000. The board met in September and we adjusted that metrics to go up to 100 cases per 100,000. So right now The 4-week average, I believe, is 60.7 cases per 100,000. So it's definitely higher than where we were back in August and September. It continues to kind of eke its way up a little bit. We're closely monitoring everything that's going on. We realize that, as JT eloquently said, things are clean, things are safe, things are easy, it's touch-free, but he'd love to be here. And I think that's all our sentiments. Like, it would be great for the administration. I know believes it. It would be great to have all the kids back and being normal. But at this point, what the board has approved in health and safety plan is the 10 to 100,000 is how we're going to operate in yellow. Anything under 10 cases in Berks County, 10 per 100,000 cases in Berks County would allow us to go back in green. And that's how the metrics are set up. We're following that guidance from the state. But again, we're closely monitoring that situation. We're closely monitoring the education plan. We're looking at how things are progressing, and we'll continue to evaluate that as we move forward. My biggest fear as superintendent right now is what the next steps are going to be in terms of cold and flu season, and how does that intersect with all of this. So we're starting to see some of that ramifications. We obviously have a case that occurred within the school district now. That's our first student case. We're also starting to see those county-wide statistics go the wrong direction at this point. And if we can see them, if we can get through cold and flu season and see those metrics start to go the opposite direction and go down towards the better route, then I think it definitely opens up those doors of opportunity to talk about what the next steps are in transition plans.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Tracy Tina, Long Swamp Township. So does that mean you're gonna wait till January, February to possibly think about going green? Or, and what does that all mean during cold and flu season? Because we have that every year, and that's normal.
So if we look at our health and safety plan, again, we go back to the data, we'd have to be under 10. So.
Okay, but is that a realistic number in this day and age? Or is it possible to say 25 to 30 might be a reasonable number that we could all go back to the school full time?
Right. So the reason that number was chosen is because that's what the Department of Education has put out for all 500 school districts. Now, that being said, I'm sure you've seen that other school districts are doing different things. And they're not following those guidelines from the Department of Education,
Right.
For various reasons. So for me, the most critical time is getting through this initial wave of the fall here and seeing where we're at. What does the cold, what does the flu do to this? Again, right now we're going in the wrong direction. But if we see things change tides, some of the conversations and theories out there is that because we're being so precautious and because we're washing hands, because we're doing all the things we're doing, maybe cold and flu season won't be as bad because we're taking all those normal precautions that we would not normally take. We're doing temperature checks here. We have the hand sanitizer, disinfecting all the classrooms. And that's just the school environment, let alone all the things that people are doing outside of school. So the hope is that will help mitigate the normal cold and flu, and it might get us into a position a little bit sooner rather than later. But I can't stick a time stamp on something right now and say, it's going to be January or it's going to be Thanksgiving or it's going to be May. It's one of those that I think we just have to continually look at that data and say, okay, here's how things are starting to trend. They're starting to look better, and we got through that hurdle of the cold and flu, and now it is, let's just say arbitrarily, Thanksgiving, and things are starting to transition themselves to counting numbers going in a better direction. I think that's a total different conversation than us in Thanksgiving time, and now cases are pushing 70, 80, and we're having a lot of issues, and cases starting to continue to grow and occur within the school district. So, that's why we're continually monitoring it. I'd love to be able to put something out and say, this is what we're doing, but I think we have to be we have a very good plan in place right now. It's not what everyone wants to do. I completely understand and respect that. But it's finding that balance between making sure our kids are safe and our staff are safe, and also looking at the data and say, yep, things are starting to get better, and we can transition ourselves into that time. So I give the board an update every week about what those data numbers look like from the county. This week was the first, as I mentioned earlier, this is our first one where we actually had to react to a case that was in the school district. So luckily, we've been really good. I think all our efforts have mitigated that. This is the first one, and hopefully we'll be able to continue that. And those cases are bound to happen. It will happen. So we just have to put steps in place to mitigate that and to keep people as safe as possible.
I think it's kind of important to note too that with our health and safety plan, it's not set in stone. It's not like carved forever. So when we feel like we're ready and things are different, like we have the ability to change that. I feel like sometimes parents think that it's like, this is it. And I just want to remind everybody that we've always said, like, if we want to reevaluate, we will. So.
Sure. Back row? No? Okay. All right. Okay, I think that's everybody here. So we will go ahead and move on then. We are currently on Roman numeral number 1, Board of Directors report. A motion to approve the items under Board of Directors report.
So moved. Second.
Peter Wagaman.
So a couple things under Board of Directors report. The first one is the meeting minutes from the September 14th meeting. Any adjustments or corrections that need to be made to those meetings before they become official records for the school district?
Mr. Potter, yeah, on page, looks like page 2, there's just a paragraph that's, I don't know, missing a couple of words. It's not really clear. It's the third to last sentence on that page, under the, it says there was board discussion about the definition of weapons in the Brandywine Heights school policy and the Fleetwood police aligned. So there's some kind of content missing there to make it a clear sentence. It's right above where roll call is shown.
Oh, that should say in the alignment to the Fleetwood Police MOU.
Yeah.
That was the conversation.
Yeah, there's just some content missing, so maybe that can be cleaned up as part of the.
Yes.
And then I just kind of have a general observation, when I read the minutes, particularly this time and maybe the last couple of times, it seems like there's been a change in our approach. In the past, when there was board discussion, that discussion was fleshed out in the meeting minutes. What questions were asked and what those responses were. What I've noticed is that it seems to be truncated. And I don't know if that's strategic and purposeful, and if so, who and when was that decision made and what was the rationale behind it? So I don't know, that's my observation. Can I get some feedback on that?
So we have tried to capture the main essence of the conversations, knowing that some of our board meetings in the past few meetings have been pretty lengthy and a lot of public discussion and comment. We tried to capture the essence of those conversations and create meeting minutes that reflect back. So someone would go and look at that, they could say, okay, this is what happened, these were the conversation points. And it's not as much of the dialogue back and forth that's captured. It's more of the, here's the general conversations that occurred so people understand that.
Okay.
It was basically because of the, there's so much content and so much public comment. We tried to create an efficient, effective way to capture that in the meeting minutes.
Okay. And philosophically, I would support that. I guess there are just certain sections of these particular meeting minutes, and really it doesn't have to do with the community discussion. It has much more to do with the board discussion. and not even on the contentious topics, from the past, month or two. I mean, there were just some questions and answers that drive certain voting positions that as a community member, if I went on the website and read why did, what was going on, all it says is after board discussion, roll call occurred. But it doesn't reflect the couple of questions that board members may have asked that are really rather pertinent to the discussion. So, I mean, we can move on. I would just encourage, folks who do the minutes. I know it's a thankless job and it's not easy to summarize. But I think it is important. The meeting minutes are part of our historic document. I think they are required by some regulation or law.
Yes, we'll go.
And they do get published on the website. So I think it's really important that the community or any member, when they read the minutes on the website, they get a feel for what board members are asking and what the accurate responses are to those questions. Every couple of years, board members get elected. And, unless you attend meetings, you would have no idea why board members are voting the way they vote if they do choose to dissent. So I would just encourage us not to truncate too much. I'm all for efficiency and streamlining, but I would encourage us not to truncate too much.
Fair enough, thank you.
Can I just be a Mrs. and not a Mr. in the adjournment motion? I know that's a funny thing, but
Yes, sorry about that.
it's okay.
Anything else under board meeting minutes? Thank you for catching that. And to your point, Mrs. Union, we'll make sure that it captures the essence of conversations. Okay, policies. We have a bunch of policies, quite honestly, this round, and we're going to see the next couple months having a more heavier policy hand on policies that are going to be up for approval. If I can just take a moment and go through a few of these, specifically the first one being the Title IX policy. So Title IX, there's new federal regulations for Title IX. PSBA came out with a recommended policy to match the new Title IX law. Our legal guidance from KKLL also came out with general guidance in terms of what we should be adopting, what we should be putting in these two policies, the discrimination policies for 103 for students and 104 for staff. I spent a lot of time going through these policies. Mr. Pratt provided some specific guidance to some of our questions that we had as what need to be in these policies, how specific these policies need to be, and have believed that we have a good working policy now in place for us to be able to use as our new discrimination and harassment policy moving forward for both, again, our students and our staff. There are a bunch of other steps beyond the policy that have to happen. Training has to occur. We have to post the training outline for community members to view. We also have to have our Title IX coordinators posted. As you noticed probably in our policy, our Title IX coordinator will be our HR director. And then there is a appeal process, and that appeal process includes myself all the way up to the board. We also will have clearly placed in our handbooks and in our website areas that if there is a concern about discrimination, where they go to fill out that form and who they contact with the Title IX coordinator. So we're working on pulling that all together, getting that posted, and having compliance with the Title IX law as soon as possible. This is the first step as we approve these policies. The next policy is the 145 wellness policy. We are going to be retiring that policy, and you will see that a new policy 246 is in place called school wellness. This reflects and matches the new nutrition guidelines. PSBA again has come out with a new policy, a recommended policy. We are adhering to that new recommended PSBA policy for nutrition guidelines. It's a rather lengthy policy. One of the things that you'll notice in this policy is that we have to establish a wellness committee. We do have a wellness committee already established in the school district. In fact, we just kicked off a STEPS challenge within the wellness committee, and One of the things that happens with the wellness committee is we have to expand the scope of the committee, and now it has to include community members, and it has to include a school board member. So if someone is really excited about wellness and would like to be able to be on the school wellness committee, Mr. Jameson Barnhart is the coordinator of the school wellness initiative as well as safety initiatives for the school district. So he leads the wellness committee and leads the wellness initiatives. If there is a school board member that's interested, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to have you connected with Mr. Barnhart and get updates about the wellness committee. So more to come on that. Again, if someone has a burning desire,
Can we ask now?
that would be wonderful.
Anybody
Or I
wanna
can
do
do a
it?
weekly update.
Anybody? Going once?
You like it?
Anybody else? Wait, anybody else?
Sorry,
Wait,
sorry.
wait.
I was just excited I had to take it.
Huh? Anybody? I'm just.
Uh,
All right, this is Isaac.
Thank you,
Roberts.
Mrs. Isaac.
Yours.
Mr.
Mr.
Sorry. All right, so that's the wellness policy. And then we have there is a update to the school student use of electronic devices. The update references virtual learning environments and some clauses that have to be put in there. Again, those are recommendations of changes that have to be made to meet the current environment that we're in. And then the last ones, which start the 300s, 400s, and 500 sections, if I can just take a moment and talk about the strategic change of these. So currently there is 300 section policies that are personnel policies that focus just on the administrative staff. Then there's 400 personnel policies that focus just on the professional teaching staff. And then there's 500 section policies that are called classified employees, which are support staff. The change, this is how they originally were set up by PSBA. There's a lot of these policies begin to overlap with each other. What's in one policy for 300s is the same as the 400s, is the same as 500s. So PSBA has taken the stance that we're going to combine these, make efficiencies, and put them all into a 300 personnel section policy. So that means that all the 400s for the teachers will be retired, and all the 500s for the classified employees will now be retired. We will no longer have a 400 and 500 section, but they'll all be collapsed into one 300 section policy. So for instance, there's a 301 creating a position policy, and previously there was a 401 creating a position and a 501 creating a position. So now there'll just be one 301 creating a position for employees. So this process to ensure that there's clear definitions, what we've done in the policies, and I'm just going to hold it up because you can see it, but I just want to highlight it. At the very top here, we put a header in, and the header says applicable staff, and then it says who does this policy apply to? Administrative employees, professional employees, and classified employees. So that's how we clearly identified and delineated who does this policy actually belong to, because there are some policies that we're going to get to that, in fact, there's one of them in tonight that you're approving, and that is under sabbatical leave. It's currently the 438, now it will become the 338 sabbatical leave restoration of health. That policy would only apply to the administrative staff and the professional employees. It would not apply to the classified employees. So in the header for that one, it'll clearly say just those two groups. So that's why we had to clearly identify that so we knew which group it applied to, and we put that right at the header of the policy in bold. So you'll start to see that format start to begin to populate themselves as we adopt these new policies. These new policies are going to be starting to roll through. It's going to take us some time to get through all the personnel policies. This is the first wave of them, and we will begin to make these adjustments as we move forward. But I wanted to make sure the board understood the directional change, the shift that's happening, and then the reasoning why is to reduce some of that redundancy and follow that PSBA guidance. I know I used the sabbatical policy as my example. I realize that one does not have the applicable staff at the top. That's because that one was done before we made the decision to collapse these. That will be on for the second reading to adjust it. So I use that as an example, and then we'll have that header in there as the new one. Does that make sense to everyone about the shifts and why? So you're going to see a bunch of policies. There's going to be a bunch that we're going to be retiring, 400s and 500s, and there'll be a bunch more that we're going to be remaking as the new 300s. So that is the summary for policies. Any questions on that before I get to item C?
Yeah,
Yes.
so I applaud the collapsing of those 3 redundant types of policies. For all the years I've been on the board, it's been so cumbersome to try and navigate. The challenge, however, is to make sure, like you said, to be clear within the policy, because there are certain situations where it's different, the language is different for professional employees compared to classified, compared to administration. And with that in mind, I know our union contract and our Act 93 agreements go into a lot of detail about benefits and things. So for example, I'm looking at, this is policy 300, sabbatical leave for restoration of health. And now it's applicable to administrative and professional employees, not applicable to classified. And then on page 2 of 3 of that, there's a change. It's the one that's in red ink. If folks can kind of let me know if you're not following where I'm at. It says, while on leave, the employee shall be entitled to insurance benefits provided other employees of a similar classification. But what was crossed out is if he or she pays the premiums and the
Pursuant to the collective bargaining.
yeah, so that's the key, and I'm just wondering if we should have language that ties this back to the collective bargaining agreement, because the collective bargaining agreement changes periodically as it gets negotiated, and these policies in theory change as we review them. But do we have a good mechanism in place to ensure that as we change one, the other gets edited, or vice versa?
Yeah, so if I can talk about the process, and then I can talk about this language directly. The process is we're taking this is a bad example, but we're taking all 3 policies, laying them out, evaluating all 3, and then collapsing them into one and taking the language to apply. So some of the policies will have a separate section for administration, a separate section for classified employees, and a separate section for professional staff. They were broken up into 3 because the language is such that it is unique for all 3 groups, other than just being a common policy. And then the policies, we try hard not to tie into the collective bargaining stipulations into the actual policy. We try to kind of point to this, because if there's a collective bargaining change, that might not get picked up as a cross-reference to the applicable policy. And so we try to make it so that the policy is kind of standalone, and we can reference the collective bargaining. So like for this one, which takes me back to this, while on leave, the employee shall be entitled to insurance benefits, so that they get that health insurance, benefits provided other employees of a similar classification. So teachers or administrators, they get the health benefits the same as they would for the administrative group, or the same as they would for the teacher group, is what that's saying, based off the classification. So it's pointing back to that contract then. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I had one other quick note. This goes back to, I think it's the first policy that's attached 100. So the discrimination Title 9,
Yes.
sexual harassment affecting students. So on page 4 of 9, in the middle of that page, there's a listing of 1 through 11. And these are supportive measures that shall be designed to restore, preserve equal access to the educational program without unreasonably burdening the other party. And it includes these examples of supportive measures. I don't know if it jumped out at anybody else, but number 4 says campus escort services. And for me, that's just a really weird phrasing of something in a school district policy. I think what we're trying to say is we will walk along with people who may need help getting from class to class to class. But just that phraseology really jumped out at me in a weird way. Maybe it's just me.
It caught me too when I read it, to be honest. And then
Thank you for admitting
no,
that.
absolutely, absolutely, you're not wrong.
As a predator.
I read it like 2 times and was like, Okay, but that makes sense, like, I justified it in my mind then.
Okay, as long as we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's escorting the student, you know, because we don't have a campus per se of a whole bunch of schools, but we have a campus here. And so it would be within that school building and transferring, escorting, so that's why I left the language. But yeah, it caught me off guard too.
And one of the other areas where we do see that is we see a few students a year who they may be a middle school student, but they take a class up at the high school for an advanced placement, and obviously that we won't leave them to their devices to just get back to the middle school for their next class, that from a transportation or an escort standpoint, we make sure that they're brought back safely.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on policies? So the final item for the agenda then for section 1 is good news. We received a $3,795 grant from the United Way, and that is specifically to fund efforts at the elementary school to support 2 supplemental programs, Imagine Math and Learning A to Z, for our kindergarten third grade students. So great news that the United Way has put together grant funding mechanisms to help school districts, realizing that there's a lot of changes in this new world of education. And so they've been very responsive to that and set up a COVID-19 grant process. So wanted to share that and acknowledge it for the board to acknowledge the receipt of that grant. Mr. Tomaso, turn it back over to you for committee
Okay,
reports.
very good. Thank you so much. We're moving on to committee reports. Mrs. Hune, you're up for BCIU.
Okay, thank you. The DCIU Board of Directors met on Thursday the 17th. In the board members' packets, there's a detailed accounting of what was done, but I thought I'd highlight just a couple of quick newsworthy items. There is a new career readiness platform for all Berks County students that the BCIU has launched. It's called Solvent Berks. It's a partnership with the BCIU Career Ready Berks Alliance and Albright College's Science Research Institute. It's free. It provides internships and mentorship and digital curriculum, as well as live online networking for all grades, believe it or not. I know it sounds crazy to think, you know, elementary grades, career readiness, but there's content there for those youngsters. So I don't know how or if we should be promoting that or communicating that to families in the district, but it sounded like a really cool opportunity. So I'd encourage the administration to get the word out to folks so that they can take advantage of it. The IU also did receive some COVID-related grants from the CARES Act. 40,000 was one grant, about 79,000 was another supplemental grant, and then those were for pre-K. And then Head Start had been awarded just shy of $360,000 under that CARES Act. So again, some nice federal money coming into Berks County public education. And one other noteworthy thing that you might recall many months ago, earlier this year, I talked about how the Pennsylvania State science standards for curriculum were being updated. And in fact, I think Mr. Volker may have shared some information about that. You were on a committee and others here participated on that committee. Those last science standards were last revised in 2002. The work has been done to provide content into the recommendation. Those recommendations now are being presented to the State Board of Education, and it's out for public comment. So it's at the stage where if anybody wants to weigh in with input, the information's available for you to look at and weigh in with input and recommendations or feedback. So anybody can do that, whether you're a public school professional or whether you're a community member. So those were the couple of key things that I wanted to highlight, but otherwise my report is as it's presented in the packet. Thank you.
Wagman with BCTC.
I'll turn this over to Andrew.
So the BCTC did have a meeting on September 23rd. There is meeting minutes that I will ensure that are attached to the to this board agenda for the committee reports. I was not present at that meeting, but I do have the meeting minutes, so I'll make sure that they are addressed and linked to this agenda.
Mr. Nyman, anything with Berkshire income tax collection?
No report?
Ms. Waller, anything with COLA?
So, do you want to have anything?
Strategic planning?
Just from the district perspective, we approved the goals. We are working and I'm meeting with all the district department leaders right now and building principals to go through the goals and how they intersect with their own individual departments and building level goals so that we can expand that and accomplish those goals for the year. So those meetings are going right now.
Negotiations?
Nothing new to report from negotiations or compensation committee.
Okay, building construction committee. I'll lean on you, Mr. Potter, with this as well, but I can kind of highlight the fact that at this point, the elementary school addition project is moving along well, as you can see with the notes that are here. Our next step, however, is an RFP for architectural services. They have been released and they are shared with companies. So basically the timeline is as such. We will have a pre-proposal meeting and building tour on Wednesday, 2 days, October 7th. From there, we will have any deadline for questions from these RFPs need to be submitted by the 15th of October. And then the response back on the 20th of October. We will then have a presentation of proposals for which the Building Construction Committee is invited to attend. That is on October 28th. And then finally, we will pick the winner at that point, and the school board will approve the firm, and that will be at the next school board meeting on November 2nd. Anything else to add, Mr. Powell?
The only other thing I'd like to add is if there's any other board members that would like to participate in that interview process, again, it is going to be on the 28th of October. We'll be interviewing the different RFP companies that are there. If you'd like to be part of that, we can absolutely accommodate other board members.
Is that all day or, you know, like
Well,
time-wise?
Be most likely a morning process and will be most of the morning.
And to be clear, the RFP is for the next phase of project. So including this building as well as the high school.
That's correct.
And then moving into grounds as well is the focus of those interviews. So if anyone wants to be a part of that, please see me, Mr. Pottinger, let us know. We can include you on this committee. Again, the one that we really like ask you to be at would be the October 28th meeting, and that starts at
this point, it's tentative, but it'll be most likely around 8:30.
Okay. So we'll get that out to you if you have any interest. Just let us know.
I would just encourage anybody who's interested. I'm part of that committee and I'm not able to attend that meeting because of my work schedule. So, I mean, these are kind of really important strategic decisions in terms of who we partner with from an architect perspective. So Mr. Wagman and Mr. Tomasi and I are the 3 current committee members, but again, I will be absent and unable to participate, or leave at this point. So please be encouraged to kind of fill my spot and then stay with us on a more permanent basis if you can.
I'd like to go.
Okay. Very good. And it's important too, if you have experience with this bidding process, RFPs, building in general, it would be that's your expertise, or you have some experience with that. We would love to have your involvement in this. So
I'll try, I'll check my schedule. Put me
Okay.
down tentatively.
I'll put you a question mark.
now.
What's that?
So I'm really good at firing contractors.
That helps too.
So just an update on where we are with the project. Mr. Tomasi did a nice job outlining what the next phase is. Where we are with the existing project is the new gymnasium on the north side, the opposite of the roadside, where the old playground was. That new gymnasium is about 2/3 of the walls are up. There are classrooms, 3 classrooms on the other side of that gymnasium, farther down. Those walls are all done, and they're planning to put the steel for the roofing on this week. The steel is all on site, which is great. Once they get that steel in place, then they'll be putting the steel in the gymnasium, and then the interior work can begin. So a lot of good progress. The company has been great. ECI is the construction manager. They've been great to work with, keeping a pretty good schedule. You know, things get bumped and there's some delays that happen here or there, but honestly, they've been really good at keeping things progressing. We've been happy with everything that was closed so far. So good updates there.
Okay. That concludes the committee reports. Any public or board comment? If not, we'll be moving on to roll call, please.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Carter.
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Henry,
Yes.
Mrs. Hume,
Yes.
Mr. Wyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Wallitzer,
Yes.
Mr. Tomasi.
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
We'll move to business and operations report, a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Wyman.
Okay, business and operations report. Items A through E, we have payment of the bills as well as the financial reports. Are there any questions on items A through E? Hearing none, we'll move on to special education. We have 3 items under special education and pupil services. Any questions on any of those 3 items? Okay, then we will jump down to facilities and maintenance. We've heard a little bit about the elementary project. We do have 4 change orders related to the elementary project totaling $9,618. We'll look for your approval. That will increase our contract award with ECI by $9,618. Questions on that? Item I would just highlight, this is more of a technical accounting item within the way that the district manages our funds. I believe I spoke probably last year at this point a little bit about this and the way that we manage our activity funds. GASB, which is the Government Accounting Standards Board and governs how we do our accounting in the district, has indicated that we need to move some specifically identified funds out of our traditional activity fund and move them into this new student-sponsored activity fund, Fund 21. So this motion tonight is just for the approval to set that fund up and then make the required transfers. I guess I learned a little bit more about GASB. There is a lot of technical stuff you can look up there. If you'd like to read more about that, but otherwise, appreciate your support with that tonight. We also have the bus drivers list for the drivers of Brandywine Transportation, as well as item K, which is a proposal from Congress Siegel to perform our Affordable Care Act employer reporting services again this year. Any questions on business and operations items? Go ahead, Mr. Tomasi.
Just one other request. Can you give us a quick update on the food service program? I mean, it seems like you guys are doing an incredibly amazing job feeding our community. So I just, if you wanted to plug the program here at the official board meeting, I'd welcome that. I don't,
Appreciate that segue.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. Knight, do you want to take it?
Sure, yeah. So, food service, if we step back to earlier in the spring and the pandemic and the fact that we were able to apply for waivers to serve meals for all for free in the community through the summer. We recognized the service team earlier in the summer for that effort. The game changer was shortly after school started, I believe it was a Friday before Labor Day. Those waivers got extended until December 31st. So the food service team has moved as quickly as we can. We first started offering free lunch and breakfast to all in our traditional offering, which, as you know, in this hybrid model is a little different with very few of the students actually eating in the building, most leaving. So we saw some increase in participation in our program due to meals being free. However, the new news this week is the way that we changed up our distribution model starting today. So again, all with the idea of getting food into the hands of as many students as possible, particularly those in need who may have some food insecurities at home. So, basically, if you're a student goes to school on Monday and Tuesday, on Monday they'll walk home with a lunch for that day, and on Tuesday they will walk home with breakfast and lunch for the remainder of the week. So essentially 4 days worth of meals for those students. So lots of planning, lots of hard work by our food service team in order to get here. This week, I'm sure will not be executed flawlessly, but we will. We're doing our best to get food into everyone's hands, and we'll take some lessons learned from this week and tweak as we go.
Huge credit to our food service staff. They've really stepped up. They've stepped up all along. Starting from March and then jumping right in and doing the food delivery out the kind of the back door type scenario to now creating opportunities to get. Craig and I have put the goal out there is we want to get that food into as many hands and households as possible. We could still do the drive up, but we knew that was going to limit. Someone living way far in the district maybe isn't going to drive the 25, 30 minutes to come in to get the food. So we have a captive audience. Let's get the food out. And so it was a mind shift change. It was a lot of coordination. It was a lot of planning. But we kept focused on the goal, which is the kids and making sure that we're helping them. And they've just done an awesome job stepping up. So tomorrow's going to be the big day because we have to package out a lot of food for the lunches and the breakfast to those students. But like I said, there's some lessons learned. I'm sure will come out of this week, but we're really excited about the opportunity to pull this off. So
Kudos to your teams. It's incredible. It's incredible.
And Mr. Nabi, can I make a request from an unnamed student? Let me just make sure. So this student said, could you serve French toast sticks
every day?
We will run that past our nutritionist. There may be a little flag waved on that, but we'll.
Okay, I wanted to get the request out because I promised this particular unnamed student that I would do that.
We'll do our best to
Thank you for that recognition, that opportunity. It is a huge effort on behalf of our food service department. They have just been rock stars.
Okay, we're good.
About to vote, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. No worries. Any other comment? Yes, sir.
I have a question on the food program. Is that paid for by the state or is that paid directly out of our school district taxes?
So the food service fund is a separate fund in the district, so we manage the revenues and expenditures separate from our general fund. The food service fund has to sustain itself independently from district taxpayers and those funds that go into the general fund. The program we just spoke of about free meals, that's actually federal dollars from the USDA. It flows through the Pennsylvania Department of Education and to the district. So we will claim based on meals served to the Pennsylvania Department of Education as actual federal dollars that flow to the district. So it's a nice opportunity to get federal funds into this community because if we don't take advantage of the program, those dollars will go to other communities.
And quite honestly, that's why we're advocating so hard for it, is because it's an awesome opportunity to get that food out to families, and really from the local tax dollar, it doesn't cost the district any money.
So Mr. Nyman's team has been able to support this program without any additions to staff. Am I just speaking that? And I think that's a really important point that folks understand, because you sort of look at the announcements and you say, how is our community able to absorb this expense? And the fact is, they've been able to create a model to support the federal dollars flowing in without having to spend, school district money. So it's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win.
Great up. Now, just to be, put the caveat there, it's only available until December 31st. That's when the grant ends. So that's why we're trying to get it out now and get it out as soon as possible so that we can take advantage of it.
All right, roll call, please.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhardt?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Wagaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter?
Yes.
Mr. Bieber?
Yes.
Mr. Tomasi?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Okay, moving on to Roman number 3, superintendent's report, a motion to approve the items under superintendent.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. So a couple items under superintendent report, and then we have a couple of discussion items. So I'll try to get through the voting items quick. I honestly wasn't sure just quite how to present this to the board. So I presented it in the way that's in front of you, but the concept here is our half-day in services that are on Fridays will now be on Wednesday mornings when there already is planned professional development during the hybrid plan. So as long as we stay within this hybrid plan, the concept is we're going to take those Friday afternoons, cancel those so they don't interfere with the education of the students, move them to the Wednesday morning when there already is no planned instruction for students, and that way it helps to make this all work smoother and keep as much education intact as possible. So we'll be operating this way. I put the dates in front of you to show you where they changed, as long as we stay within that yellow phase. So they're all listed for the year, but again, that's really contingent on how long we stay here. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? It's a little bit weird how I didn't want to reapprove the whole entire calendar because it could adjust based off of kind of where we end up by May, even sooner than that. But I just used May because that's the last one on that. The other one is B. We're going to talk about that in a second with Mr. Geist's presentation. But this is the wording is to authorize the district administration to develop guidelines permitting the presence of both team athletics and spectators in the gymnasium during athletic events. So the reason this is on here, and if you look at the attachment, there's the history in there about what has happened with spectators and indoor sports in particular. It also applies to outdoor sports, but really indoor sports when it's limited to 25. As you know, we have the 25 limit, then we didn't have the 25 limit, then we do have the 25 limit. So that's without all the names and the timelines, that's the gist of it. And so the reason we're putting this before the board is to really get your approval that if that opportunity comes where we don't have to follow the 25 limit, or there is latitude in how we interpret that 25 limit, that the board is comfortable with the administration moving forward. Because when we were in the process of had the 25 limit, then didn't have the 25 limit, there was a point in time when the PDE and the governor's office was saying, school districts, we're still strongly encouraging you to follow the 25 limit. And so at that point, we really needed some guidance from the board to make sure that you were okay with us allowing the spectators inside as long as we were doing it in a safe manner. And that's what we'd like to outline tonight in Mr. Geist's presentation, as a segue, into what our recommendation would be and how that would look like, what that would look like in a safe manner of having spectators in if we were allowed to get past that 25 limit inside. So, Mr. Geist, I will transition to you as we move forward. The other thing that Mr. Geist will be presenting on is the discussion of the creation of a female wrestling team as a winter sport. So that is something that has come to our attention. We have female athletes that are interested in wrestling that have wrestled for the Brandywine team, and then as they get a little bit older into their athletic career and in their schooling, they are not as inclined to want to continue with the sport because of the gender differences. And so we're looking at the opportunity, and what we want to present to you this evening is there interest in supporting a wrestling team? So we're not going to vote on it tonight, but we just wanted to share with you the concept behind why we're talking about this.
Good evening, everybody. I just have to say that it is exciting to have the opportunity to talk about athletics tonight at the board meeting. It has been a roller coaster for all of us in this room. I do want to acknowledge a few people. I do want to acknowledge our St. Luke's athletic trainers who've done an outstanding job in assisting us through this whole process of our health and safety and return to play plan. Appreciate all their efforts. Also our coaches who actually were, looked at the plan, implemented the plan, and continue to do that to this day. So I thank them. Also our athletes themselves. Once again, we do still have to refine them from time to time because, as you know, in sports, we do get closer together. But they've done an excellent job as well. And then finally, I want to thank our families because this is unprecedented time, as we all know, and it took flexibility for everybody in this community to make this happen. So I want to thank them as well because, as you know, with the half days, it required families to get kids back to the school for practices and for games and transporting to competitions as well. So I can't thank our community enough for making this possible and getting our athletes back on the playing fields and the courts. So thank you, everyone. So as Mr. Potiker alluded to, this is kind of the history of the roller coaster when it comes to gatherings and spectators. July was the 25 and the 250. September 15th. September 15th. We kind of we're starting to look at how we can bring more spectators in, and then of course September 22nd things changed again, and then of course October 1 we went back to the 25 and the 250 again. So it's been that roller coaster. I will say that the way I look at this, and as you all look at this too, first priority is to get our athletes back playing again. We've accomplished that. We've been able to maintain them playing, and that's what the focus remains, keeping our athletes' safety and then also keeping them playing. What our current policy, just so that you're aware, we are monitoring our attendance at games. Right now what we're using is a voucher system. We are not charging admission into games as kind of a token of our appreciation to our families for all they're doing. So I appreciate the board for allowing that to occur. But what we have done is for both our home events and our away events, we are giving our parents 2 vouchers, which allows them to get in the game. And it's not like, once again, we're not charging, but it's a way of us monitoring how many people are at our events. As part of those vouchers to families, we're not turning away siblings, of course. So if there's young siblings that are coming around with their families, we're also counting them and allowing them as well to observe and participate in the event. At some events this year that are not as well attended, we also have been monitoring it. If there are some students that want to come and watch, if we have the capacity to do so, we allow them to come. But I'll be honest with you, right now there hasn't been a whole lot of our students participating or coming and attending our games. Now, on certain occasions, like as Olivia Deicher was mentioning about the senior nights, of course, our seniors want grandparents and other family members there. So we have a process in place that athletes and their families can request additional vouchers or spots to come to the games. And then I create a VIP media list, and I put those names on the list. And our ticket takers are still located where they have been for all of our soccer events in the past. And we also look for the voucher, and then we also look at who's on that VIP list, media list, and we let them in. And once again, it's to track and to monitor how many people are coming and attending. Because keep in mind, that 250 number is not just spectators. That 250, you have to subtract the amount of players and rostered athletes, coaches, other staff that travel with that team, and our roster, and all our game workers get counted into that 250. Now, I will say that in following this policy and monitoring it, I think our first game on the 22nd, which was a boys soccer game, we were close to the 250 limit. We didn't go over, but we were close. And since that night, it hasn't been quite up to that 250. So we do have some available spots. Once again, I tell our families, if you have someone that you know that wants to come to the game, have them get in touch with me. And if we have the spots available, we put them on that list. We have put signs, yard signs at our venue, asking our families and spectators to, respect social distancing and face coverings. And for the most part, I've seen that most of our spectators have been following those guidelines. Moving on, where it's become the biggest challenge is with the indoor events, and right now, the only indoor event we have right now is volleyball. But when you look at that 25 limit, I'll be honest with you, some of the conversations I had around volleyball with other athletic directors and coaches has been a challenge to say the least. You know, most volleyball teams have 12, at least 12 on a rostered team. So when you're looking at that 20, if you have two teams with 12 athletes, you're already at 24. And that doesn't count in the fact the coaches, the officials, the score clock, all that stuff. So we were actually, at the beginning of the year, we actually only had 9 players from each team out on the court at a time. That means the 6 that are actually out there on the court playing, 3 substitutes and a coach. The rest of the team that might get into the game at some point, we had to have in a holding area outside the hall before they could come in, which, those of you that are athletes, if you can imagine, you have to call someone out in the hallway that has no idea what's going on in that game at that time and tell them to go in for someone and substitute. So that has been a challenge, to say the least. So that's where we are now. That's kind of the process we have in place now. As Mr. Potiker alluded to, if this policy changes and we are allowed to have more bodies into the gym at one time, we will revisit that and kind of look at, okay, how can we get more people into that gym? The first priority, once again, would be to get all the athletes back in there. So right now, JV teams are not in the gym when the varsity is playing and vice versa. So that would be my first priority if there's some changes to this policy, is to get the athletes back in there. And then if we are looking at that, then maybe if we can allow some spectators in, is going to kind of a similar process that we're using for our outdoor events with the voucher system, that a certain number of vouchers per family. And then also maybe looking at having JV parents being able to come in to watch JV players and then having to leave, and then varsity parents coming in to watch varsity. Those are all things that we will monitor and see if we can implement. But keep in mind, our administration has kind of put our logos on our bleachers 6 feet apart. And when we count those out, that's 63 spots. Am I correct, Matt?
66.
66. So not many. So there's not a lot of people that we can fit and make sure they're socially distanced. So now keep in mind, you could have, husband and wife sitting there together, but once again, not a whole lot to work with. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. But those are kind of things that we will consider if the spectator policy is changed. As it says down there, we'll continue with no admission charges for the fall season. And we'll continue to ask that spectators wear facial coverings and social distance. We have been trying to stream our games home. We were using the Small Player Big Play app. I'm gonna be honest, it has been a challenge. We've been exploring different ways to use the app, better locations for a better stream. Once we kind of had things figured out, the app crashed and was down for a couple days. It's back up again. but hasn't been the best streaming device that we use. So for the winter, we have a different plan in place. We have a camera that's going to be installed in our gym. That does not have to be manned by anyone. It follows the flow of the action of the game. It also syncs to our coaches that use the software, Huddle, and it links to their devices so that they'll have their game tape afterwards. And then it's something that we can link to YouTube, and there won't be any charge to our families as well. So, yeah, so looking forward to that for the winter season. Our target is to have that ready to go for the winter season.
Is that very similar to what Tomahawking is doing?
Yes, it is very similar.
Because the Tomahawking stream was like
Yeah.
great.
I have to admit, I tuned into the Tomahawking game for a little bit, and I agree, their stream was outstanding.
And the only other thing I would say when they're streaming, like I've watched every soccer game and I've watched probably 40% of the volleyball. If they can start the camera vertical, so I don't have to lay like this, get it to turn.
Well, and that's part of the app problem too. We've been
Yeah, yeah.
having that, it flips sometimes, so, yeah, we've had our struggles with that app.
Because it seemed like if the soccer game was started vertically and you flipped your phone, it would flip with it. But if your screen was horizontal when it started and you went to flip it, it went vertical. So I don't know. But either way, thank you for doing what you did. I got to watch soccer.
Any other questions about spectator policy and events? I will be honest, as it was stated earlier, one of the things I did today or last night was to remind our coaches that, we're about 2.5 weeks in, we got a ways to go. So let's not let our guard down, okay? Let's continue to practice, hand hygiene, wearing the mask, limiting our exposure out in the community in large social gatherings, because we want to make it through this fall. Because the next question I get is, what do you think is going to happen this winter? And I keep telling them, let's get through the fall. We have to get through the fall. If we get through the fall without a major incident, then we have a better chance for the winter. Any questions? All right, shifting gears. I wanted to talk to you guys about an effort that's going throughout the Commonwealth around girls wrestling. It's something that is gaining some momentum across the Commonwealth, and I just wanted to present it to you tonight to kind of put it on your radar, because I do believe we have a population of female athletes that have been interested in wrestling and have wrestled in the youth program, in the middle school program, and then when they get to high school, they drop off, because at that point, they don't want to wrestle boys anymore. They're looking to wrestle girls. And I'll be honest with you, this is a movement throughout the state of Maryland. Pennsylvania. Some history with girls wrestling. It's one of the fastest growing sports nationally. Had experienced 29 consecutive seasons of growth. 22 state associations have sanctioned girls wrestling, some over 20 years. So right now, it is not a PIAA sanctioned sport in Pennsylvania. We'll talk a little bit about that later. Women's wrestling has been in the World Championships since 1989 and in the Olympics since 2004. One of the good things about girls wrestling too, it is providing more opportunities for scholarships and opportunities to participate at the collegiate level. More and more universities are starting up with female wrestling. So another great opportunity for our athletes. Here's some more history on girls wrestling in Pennsylvania. Just kind of some of the numbers there that you can see across the Commonwealth. Once again, in talking with our Bullitt Mac Club representatives, our middle school coaches and high school coaches, just in the last 3 to 4 years, there have been 10 girls in Brandywine that were wrestlers. and wrestled all the way through the youth program, through middle school, and once again, dropped out when they got to high school. So there is a population here at Brandywine that is interested. Why add girls wrestling? You know, these are kind of the same reasons why we have sports in general, right? More engagement. We have girls basketball in the winter and cheerleading, but other than that, those are the only two sports that we offer. So more opportunities for girls to get involved in athletics. The other good thing is it's very cost effective. And I'll show that a little bit later on as well. Not a whole lot of money that is needed to start this program up. One of the things that we would like to start a girls wrestling program too is to complete that gap that we have right now. We want to have a continuum from elementary, middle school to high school. Also, what they've been found in some of the research of schools that started wrestling for females is that the actual number of boys wrestlers have increased. If you know anything about our wrestling program now, we have a really good, solid wrestling program. Our wrestlers are top notch, but we get up into some of the other weights and we have some holes. So we could use more participation numbers with our boys wrestling program. Once again, the biggest, I would say, plus is it allows girls to wrestle girls. Because that's what they want to do. And when they get to high school, it's just not an interest to them anymore. Whereas BIAA on girls wrestling, they're looking at in the next probably 2 years, they are thinking that they'll have 100 teams signed up to make it a PIAA sanctioned sport. Just to give you an idea, locally, Governor Mifflin was one of the schools in Berks County that has already approved a girls wrestling program for this year. More programs in the valley, I believe Easton, Parkland, some other schools in the Lehigh Valley have also approved of girls wrestling. Once again, those are bigger schools, I realize that, than Brandywine. But I believe if you take in our student population, I do think we have enough girls to start a team. It's almost with the philosophy, you build it, they'll come. So with logistics, this will be tied closely to our male wrestling program. Practice, our coach, our varsity coach will coach the boys and the girls. Practice will occur at the same time. The coach will split the time between the two programs. The only thing that I would ask this board to consider is hiring a female assistant coach to help with the logistical planning and the practices and also the competitions. Right now, we would currently be looking at maybe 5 to 7 events, maybe even smaller than that to start out with. Some of these events would occur when we're playing the team that we're playing on the boys' night and have the girls wrestle either before the boys' match or after the match. And also looking like we do with the boys, also look for tournament competitions throughout the state. These are some of the competitions that have girls sanctioned already. There are local girls only tournaments. Sometimes they have it as a part of a JV tournament. There's also state regional events and dual meets with other foreign teams. For instance, we could wrestle a team from Governor Mifflin. Once again, some of the statistics there. Once girls find out that they're able to wrestle other girls, the numbers increase. And states and schools that have added girls wrestling saw an increase as high as 400%. And once again, it's a very inclusive sport and it's open to individuals of all ability levels. This is just kind of a breakdown that I would say would be the financial impact. Once again, if we did get a female coach assistant, it would be $1,000. Transportation, I believe, would be cost neutral because we would be using school vans and also the transportation used for the boys. One of the other positives is uniforms. We got new uniforms last year. And part of the uniform purchase, we got shorts and hybrid shirts, which the girls can wear as well. Those are unisex uniforms. And then probably another $1,000 when you take into consideration the fees for tournaments and other competitions, official fees, all the other logistic costs that we incur for a regular boys wrestling program. Any questions?
Would we then consider, as this rolls along, I'd imagine down the road, we're gonna look at a middle school team then, correct?
That would be, yeah, that would be hopeful that it would grow that to that point where we would start high
Right.
school.
Currently, boys wise, I mean, last year we had what, 7, maybe 8?
We had 8, but, yes.
What do we have this year, do you know?
I don't have the numbers this year, which I can give you next time, because we're in the process
That's all
of
good.
registration.
You know, I'm thinking now, you know, as far as coaches right now, we still have 3 at the high school, 1 at the middle school with a volunteer, correct?
Correct.
So, yeah, that would be.
And like I said, those things can always be adjusted the way.
Great.
So I would just, I applaud you for this. I having been a part of the MAC club with my boys, I can say that I have, matter of fact, seen a lot of girls, unfortunately, transition out of the sport, begrudgingly, to be honest, in certain cases. So whatever can be done. Now timeline wise, what is the feel here? I mean, is this something that you're going to come back to us, circle around to us at a later meeting?
I was going to talk to Mr. Potiver, and I were talking, this was just to be, put it on everybody's radar, and probably maybe the next meeting, maybe, you maybe a vote and see where everybody is with this idea.
And the process of, you mentioned that the PIWA, you're looking at possibly 100 teams potentially in the next 2 years. What, can you just kind of give us a high level, what is the process of registering through the PIAA for the sport?
So there is a wrestling association in Pennsylvania that would petition the PIAA. PIAA has already been in talks with and that's really, PIAA has given that, you get 100 schools that say they have a program, we'll approve it and make it a PIAA sanctioned sport. So that's kind of where we are right now, trying to get to that 100 school mark. That's like the number that we want to hit to get it approved.
Yeah, I'm supported 100%.
All for options. Yeah.
Scott, what about the swim team that we sort of tabled?
What's that? I'm sorry.
The swim team that we sort of, that they're on their own other than buying them from uniforms and
The only
brought
thing-
up several times.
Yeah, I know we had talked about that at other meetings. The only thing that I have with the swimming is that, with the swimming, it's more of a logistical planner that does with the swimming. I know and they're there on the day of the events, kind of to manage the events, but I do think that coaching wrestling in a sport who's going to be there every single day with the kids, Monday through Saturday on most occasions. That's why I would ask for the stipend for that female coach, because they are going to be putting in that time and supervision on an almost daily basis throughout the season. It's a little bit what those volunteers did, I felt, because they did do a lot of planning, and logistical planning to get those swimmers to where they need to go. But I do see it a little differently.
I would just, again, applaud you for bringing it to the board and being a champion and a leader in this regard. It sounds like one other district in the county is further ahead, and we're certainly keeping pace, I would think, at minimum. So thank you for that. And just a thought, again, in terms of the coaching stipend, there's no other high school coach that makes as little as $1,000. Other than, it looks like an assistant cheerleading coach. So I would just encourage some proactive thinking around equity in our compensation. And from my perspective, it should be athlete driven in terms of the count. So if there's only 1 or 2, female wrestlers initially, then perhaps $1,000 is the right number. But at some point, I would really encourage the board to look at parity across coaching salaries and not undercompensate this coach.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and maybe we possibly look at, you know, if we do have 3 boys coaches, maybe we do step that one back down to the middle school so we can get an equivalent woman's coach in there if we're gonna go forward with this, because I agree with Liz 100%. You can't throw someone in there and say, hey, you're gonna get a couple $1,000. Meanwhile, we moved one guy up who's getting this. I mean, I think right now, if I remember correctly, our high school boys program, I think payroll is probably around 10 grand. I think with the 3 coaches, correct?
Yeah. No, it's a good point. You know, I was looking, I threw the $1,000 thinking that it would be small at first, but I do agree if it does to grow and be equitable, it's a good point.
I didn't, bringing back to Dr. Carter's swimming topic, there are a lot of youth swimmers, and I know you know because of James, but that is something was there ever a swim? This is maybe
We have talked about it for, the last 3 years. And the whole problem is when everybody moves up, we can't find schools that will swim against, we don't have enough to actually make like a relay team or that type of thing. We have good individual swimmers, but to actually have a swim meet, say, let's just say Wilson, okay? Due to power rankings and all that other nonsense that goes into all of this stuff, they don't want to swim against us because if one of their swimmers loses to Brandywine, they might as well forget even qualifying because it just hurts their power rankings that bad. And we went over this for, I don't know, it was probably 2 or 3 different meetings where I was a big proponent of trying to get a swim team and, you know, what do we need to do? And Scott ran the numbers and it was just a matter of, we had great swimmers. We just didn't have enough of them to keep, and how we were gonna get a pool, how we were gonna get them there. It was.
Yeah, I know the pool issue has been the issue with us as well, with having a summer swim team, is those kids wanna swim all year round, but finding the location is always hard. Yeah, I didn't realize the size wise, but that makes sense. I mean, do we think, I guess it's a long topic of discussion, trying to get, if the pool is ever in the future, would that make it grow, you know? Why not?
Like you said though, there's always a lot of kids that join the swim team at a young age. And I don't know if it's due to other sports once they get to high school, because like any other thing in this world anymore, especially swimming, if you're not doing it every day, you tend to fall behind. And a lot of kids in Brandywine have other sports they'd rather do than swim. Swim, I think some of them do in the off season, but your top of the line swimmers, that's pretty much what they do. I mean, I know Skylar Strunk played soccer, and I don't know if she played any other sports, but you know, we lose them as they get older.
But having those options for individualized sports to be able to excel in, like my kid will never be on a baseball team, but he loves swimming. I mean, he's good at swimming. So, and you know, I'm not saying I have to look into it, but I think that always being open-minded to those sports that are individualized that a kid can excel in, it doesn't necessarily have to.
Well, individualized, they do go under Brandywine.
Yes, so they swim for Brandywine. They, what you're alluding to is for a lot of the swimmers that we had phenomenal swimmers the last 4 years that competed at a very, very high level, district champions. To be factual, and one had a chance to be a state champion, and of course, everything was shut down because of COVID. So, yeah, But what you're saying too, it is a commitment individually of those athletes because they do it on their own. They go to different pools like Boyertown and they swim every morning at 6 o'clock. I mean, the amount of dedication those athletes had is phenomenal. But they almost have their own coaches. Even the volunteer coaches we had were mostly parents, and they were the ones kind of doing like I said, I don't want to minimize what they did. They did a lot of logistical planning to get those kids those opportunities, but they weren't actually doing a lot of the actual coaching on strokes, and they were getting that done at their club teams and at the pools that they go and swim at in the mornings.
Yeah, so it's mostly size, that's what's restricting us right now, is that word?
And not having a location.
The location, all right, yeah, build the pool, that's how my sister went to college, it's the only thing that got her. All right.
So
Thank
it
you
sounds
very
like we
much.
support, we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting, for official board consideration. And then again, circling back this evening, the concept behind Superintendent B is that if things lighten up, we have a framework established to allow the administration to make those decisions. Because right now, if things lighten up, and it's one of those, well, we're still recommending guidelines to follow, we really don't have any leg to stand on, we would have to come back to you. So we're trying to do this proactively so that if things lighten up, we can jump on that pretty quick. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Real quick, Scott, did you want to mention anything about the golf?
Yeah, we are gonna do, we will
Okay,
do, we'll do a formal recognition.
That was another great play.
Absolutely.
That was phenomenal.
Absolutely.
We figured he's gonna go farther, and so
Yes,
we're
yes,
purposely
yes.
holding.
That was
Okay,
phenomenal.
Mr. Potter, just to clarify, that Superintendent B and the sort of setting you guys up to make decisions going forward, your intention is that you would continue to follow the state's guidelines.
that's correct. Right now, we're gonna follow state guidelines until the next, whatever happens.
Okay.
We don't know what that's gonna be, but with the way that things have been.
It'll be this week.
What'd you say?
It'll be this week.
Yeah? Okay, there you go. Okay, 3 other items. I apologize, but we have our inductees here this evening. And so I just wanted to recognize them. We're going to talk with them at the end of the meeting. I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, why they chose Brandywine, and why they're working in the school district, and then what they're teaching. But I just want to recognize that they're here. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. Again, we will have a chance to talk to them in the future. Second thing, in your superintendent report, there is a summary of the October enrollment review. I was going to verbally go through that because of time, if the board's okay with that. I put it in the weekly update, but I also put it in the superintendent report, and you can see some of the statistics and summary of where we are with enrollment for this year versus where we ended last June. So you can do some comparisons and look at that data point. The final thing I would like to spend just a few minutes on is talking about, everyone should have in their packets this evening a summary document of just, I thought it'd be good just to take a moment, and it actually segues great with what the public comment was at the beginning of the board meeting. It was I kind of started talking about some of those points already, but just to reiterate where we are as we now are 24 days into the school year. So that's how far we are into the school year, 24 days. I thought I'd provide the board a little update. There is a grid there of kind of the pros and cons of the current model we have in place. There are a lot of things going well. From the pro of it, we are getting some face-to-face instruction. It's 2 days a week, as we know, not quite where we would love to see it, but at least we're getting some face-to-face. The social distancing, because of only having half the students here, has been going great. We've been able to separate the students. We've been able to ensure the cleaning processes are put in place because we're using our paraprofessionals to help be that first layer of cleaning before our custodians come in. So our paraprofessionals are cleaning all the desks and all the common areas down. And then the custodians come in, they clean, take out the trash, do the floors, they do a visuals check to make sure everything was done. Then they disinfect, and then they seal the room. That happens every night. And so it gives us that check and balance to make sure all these rooms are being cleaned. So those cleaning measures are going really, really well. Our kindergartners, as you know, are in half day, and that's going really well because of only having half the students. A lot of good instructions occurring in that short amount of time. And then the last piece is it has been very effective in terms of allowing flexible instruction. So we to date, we've actually had 75 plus staff or student quarantined for some reason or another. We've only had one case, which is the one we know about, but because of babysitter maybe was concerned or someone wasn't feeling good, so they were quarantined, they could get a test. We've had 75 individuals up to this point that had to quarantine for some reason. So that's a pretty big significant number. Those students have been able to follow along with instructions. So when they are home, they just simply do the virtual side of it instead of coming in the state. So that has been a tremendous benefit to the hybrid plan and what we've been able to do so far.
Andrew, do you know how many of those people were actually tested?
I do, but I don't know right off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a chart going.
So there were some of these people were tested and obviously tested negative.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So while there are a lot of positives, there also are some things that are not the same as being normal. So that's kind of our con list here. Obviously, that consistent schedule, being here every day is something we're missing. I know where a lot of us are longing for that, but that's something that we're not hitting yet because of the current plan. Some students are struggling with the online. We realize that in the afternoon, that is challenging to do the online work. Sometimes it's challenging to do the morning work when they are home in that virtual world and trying to do that asynchronous learning. So that can be challenging, whether that's an elementary student or that can be challenging at the high school level for different and varying reasons. At the elementary, obviously, it needs a little bit more parent control. At the high school, it can be a little bit more challenging due to the content. So that's been a little bit challenging. And it's also challenging for our staff. I give our staff a ton of credit. This has been, from the get-go, we told our staff, this is going to be the hardest model to implement because you have to develop plans for the in-person instruction in the morning. You have to develop plans for the afternoon hybrid one, which isn't the same because you have to bridge your lesson and make it really short. And then you also have to plan for the asynchronous stuff for the kids that are online at home. So there's 3 lesson plans going on in one day for the teachers. It's been a lot of work. They've been extremely flexible. They've been great to work with to this point and have done a phenomenal job. So that's kind of the pros and cons. There's some additional data points there. 17% of our students at this point are enrolled in a full-time virtual academy. And that also is reflected in our enrollment report. So we have 242 full-time students right now in the virtual academy. Last year, as a point of comparison, we only had 24 full-time students. So that has been a big burden for Mrs. Hanich, but that's been going pretty well. And I think Tatiana had a good comment about that this evening too, from her perspective there. Bandwidth. So some of the considerations we have been talking about is, well, how much bandwidth do we have? And does that open up other options and considerations? You can see that we're running about 3/4, and so we're not maxing out yet, but it's there. And so we're starting to evaluate some other options to expand that internet and to expand that bandwidth. Part of our problem is because we're remote, we don't have 2 internet providers, so it's really hard to double that, to increase that bandwidth where we currently are. So we're exploring some options though to look at. We talked about the quarantine and how many have quarantined. As we talked about earlier, again, we're at the 60.7 average for the 4-week average per 100,000 COVID cases. And I think it's important to say, like, why are we doing this? Let's go back to the why. And we know that the state recommended a hybrid plan. We flushed out different options as a board and thought that hybrid plan was going to be our best way to approach the school year, going into the school year. And I still believe it is. I believe that we are in a good position. I believe that there are struggles, which kind of goes into the next segue of this is community feedback. So we've gotten a lot of feedback on various lenses. I know most recently the board has received quite a few emails pushing and encouraging the board to go and evaluate full-time instruction. So if I can just take a moment and kind of categorize what the comments have been. The first leading comments was, thank you so much for the full-time opportunity. Because there's families and students out there that are really concerned. And because of that, they did not want to come into school at all. And so they decided to put the full-time virtual option. So that has been a pretty good opportunity. It looks a little different. I think it didn't meet some people's original expectations or not maybe expectations, but thoughts of what that program is going to look like. But I think it has molded, and our staff that have been teaching the program, especially at the elementary school, have done a really nice job. Safety measures that have been put in place have been done really well. And to that point, we actually have some students that are full-time in the virtual academy that have left the virtual academy to come back into the hybrid because they've heard that it's going well. So that's been a good thing. We also know that there are families that are very interested in feeling very comfortable with where we are with the safety measures and are looking to have their students go back more into a full-time world. And that segueing in with that it is challenging in the current status that we're in. Some I hear on both ends of the spectrum that it's not challenging enough, and the others that are on the other end of the spectrum saying, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming, we can't do this anymore. So I honestly have both ends as far as I could reach is how far it's spread apart. So that's kind of the feedback that we have right now. The recommendation is kind of a summary of what I had already kind of used my thunder for previously, but I think it's really important that we stay the course. My biggest concern right now is what's going to happen with that cold and flu season. Obviously, having that first case and starting to see the impacts of what that could look like in terms of quarantining as precautionary measures. Those things have taken place this last couple of days here. My biggest concern, though, is once we get into cold and flu, we're not going to be able to know the difference between flu, the cold, or COVID. And I'm really concerned about that. And then we're going to have to start quarantining more people. And then we're going to have an issue of staff shortages and students being out. And those are things that concern me right now. I think it's important just to buy a little time. Let's get over that next hurdle, which, we can evaluate this again, month by month, but, let's get over the next hurdle of cold and flu season hitting this fall. Evaluate that, come back and say, okay, what are the numbers doing as I explained earlier? Are numbers starting to come down because of all the precautionary measures that are in place? We don't see the flu. We're not having those quarantine issues. And if that's the case, then I think we need to evaluate where we are. I can say that as an administrative team, we're evaluating all kinds of different options right now as a transitional path to get us to that final end game of getting our students back in when we think that is safe as a board to do that. So I just would like to conclude with, I appreciate everyone's support. As a board, you have been so I've got to talk to all of you individually and sitting in these meetings. Everyone has been so supportive. I know in talking to each of you individually, we're at different points. I realize that. Some people are on this end of the spectrum, some are on this end of the spectrum, and we have different viewpoints on that. What I have grown to appreciate is everyone's just recognition of the work that's gone into it and recognition that we are trying to make the best plan possible for our kids. And I really appreciate that support because, again, I think it's important just to, I understand, I appreciate, I hear the concerns, I appreciate especially your board considerations of where we are. I think we just need to buy a little time to get us over that next hurdle, and then we can start talking about what those next steps are. But we have to get over that next hurdle and see what that looks like. So again, I appreciate everyone's support through that process because, again, we have all varying perspectives on this, but it's really important that you kind of carry that same messaging moving forward to our community and as a team here. So, thank you. That's where we are. Questions from me?
Andrew, currently,
Yeah.
BCTC kids only go the days they are in school, correct?
That's correct, yeah. So if I can just elaborate on that a little bit, it's a good segue. So we did receive an email. So first, I know the board has received many emails. When
I've read all
those,
21 of them.
I respond to those individually. I usually don't respond to everyone, but I respond to everyone that comes from the district perspective, just so you know. You don't, if you want to respond as a board member, that's fine. But just so you know, there is a district response that goes out. That being said, the BCTC leadership has been working with county superintendents to talk about the transition plans. And so as school districts start to change plans, they also likewise are adjusting their BCTC plans to accommodate, because what's happening is BCTC is mirroring what's happening in the school districts. So as the 16 sending school districts change their plans, they're morphing to that as well. And then, of course, they have 16 different students coming in from, 16 different school district students coming in, and so we are looking at plans to increase that, to get more opportunities for those BCTC students, to get more of that hands-on approach to the education. But it's kind of a staged approach.
Okay.
Just making sure that with 16 different sending districts and all those kids, that's done effectively and
Right.
in a procedural manner. So
Right.
right now, it is mirroring what we're doing, but there is discussions and conversations about, okay, like what are those next steps looking like? And that's currently happening because districts are changing plans and BCTC is adopting that. That's kind of, I'll call it phase one, and then phase two will say, okay, now what can we do for the other districts that have maintained consistency?
Okay, and if and when we transition to that plan, is it more of a transportation thing or just more because of the contact from different areas coming into one building? Is that?
It's the contact.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the contact. The transportation, we have that pretty much figured out.
Okay.
We actually, to Brooke's credit, who was here earlier, she had developed on top of a Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday plan, she had developed a kindergarten plan, and she developed a BCTC plan as well. And then BCTC's plans kind of moved in the beginning of the year, so we dropped that, but we do have something in place to pick back up.
Yeah, because that was one of my legitimate big concerns for those kids, because you can't teach hands-on online. And those kids are really, really missing out on what they need to do to follow their career path. So the sooner we can get that done, I'm all for it. I know COVID's going on. You can't teach plumbing or auto body from a computer. It's just nearly impossible. So
Yeah,
that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, again, they're working to get there, but it's a strategic process, more on the safety
I
lens,
understand.
not just saying, okay, open up, everyone can come.
I understand.
They're purposely, and so I give BCTC leadership a lot of credit, because A, they're looking to it, B, they're doing it in a purposeful way.
I just read the email and I wanted to put it out there,
Yep.
so the person who sent the email knew I asked about it.
Andy, can I ask a question? I know I thought in the emails that were being sent to us, the parent survey was a genius idea to get a feel of what our community is really feeling.
Yeah.
And I would think from an administrative perspective, it could be very eye-opening, because you might have half of those people not wanting to come back in person. Is that gonna add to our virtual academy, like just for planning purposes, to get a feel of what they're thinking? Have you guys thought any more about that, about doing a survey, and when they expect to have one?
Yeah, I think we put in here somewhere in this memo about doing a parent survey, and we're looking to do that this fall. We definitely want to do that. Again, with the numbers the way they are right now, they're going the wrong direction. But if we can get them to start shifting the other way, it's really important to get that feedback here where we are. So I would say within the next month or so, we're going to be getting that out.
A couple of quick things. Thank you, by the way, for this synopsis. I mean, really helpful, good data points and thoughtful presentation in terms of helping us understand where the administration's head is at. So thank you for that. I just want to, maybe because I'm a little data geeky every once in a while, Mr. Farina, you and I would be similar in that regard. So on the enrollment report that's normally in the board packet, I just did, some quick crunching of the numbers in the virtual academy column full time. And so your 17% for the district is on, I've got 17.6%, but close enough. What was super interesting to me is at the elementary level, it's higher than anywhere else. That figure is 20%, so 1 out of 5 elementary students is full-time in the virtual academy.
I think that's because of childcare. They needed to know every day that their child, what their learning plan was. It couldn't be like half of the time in daycare, the other half they're in school. They needed it to be consistent.
Makes sense, makes sense. But again, it just jumped out at me. I didn't in my mind's eye, I expected a much higher number, like very heavily weighted in the high school.
Yeah.
It is high in the high school, it's 19%. But again, I found that real interesting. And then the other data point that I thought was really compelling was when you read across that high school, the combination of full-time in the virtual academy plus part-time in the virtual academy adds up to 320 kids out of our high school population of just shy of 470. So that's almost 70% of our high school students are either full-time or part-time in the virtual academy. That is an incredible number. I know, Andrew, several years back, you stated almost a goal of saying that our students, by the time we graduate them, every student should have been exposed to at least one online course. You were way ahead of COVID on that. It wasn't, but I mean, given COVID, those numbers advanced dramatically, but still, 69% of our high school population has had that exposure this year to either full virtual or part-time. One other quick thing, maybe I'm confused, out of district placements, our total enrollment is 10, but when you look at students with academic IEPs, the number's 11. So I'm not sure how we could be off there, so maybe we just need to double check that 11.
Maybe one of the students doesn't have
No, it's the other way. You have 10 students in the program, but you have 11 with an IEP. So,
I think it's online, it looks 11 and 11.
okay,
So maybe it just got.
okay, yeah, so it's been corrected, good. Okay,
Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure.
And you're referring to the out-of-district placements that the 11 in total enrollment versus the, well, what numbers of total enrollment versus the student?
Yeah, what was in my board packet that was mailed home earlier in the week, it's dated October 2020, and the total enrollment column for out-of-district placements was 10 people out of district. But the students with academic IEPs in that same out-of-district category was 11. So you can't have more people with an IEP than you have people. Yes.
They match.
So it sounds like online you fixed it, so it's good. Okay, so I have one other thought, just in terms of this whole issue of if and when and how we go back to full-time, normal school. If and when and how we get to green. Right now, you've acknowledged the trend is not going in the direction that would support sending us back full-time. So with that in mind, and with your recommendation to say, let's get through the next wave, if it's a wave, the cold and flu season and the trend of the data. In the meantime, I so feel the pain of the moms and dads in the community whose kids are struggling. I hear stories of tears, and I hear lots of, I don't want to say complaint, lots of feedback online about the struggles. So what I'm sitting here wondering is, it's not like going back full time solves all our problems. Frankly, that's not an option right now. So pining for it doesn't really do us any good, other than just exacerbate the visibility that you're in pain. What are the other things that we as a board and we as a district could be brainstorming and doing to help our families who have students who, for whatever reason, are struggling in the current situation? Some kids, mentioned they are thriving. Others are doing fine, even though they prefer to be in the building, but they're doing fine. There's other kids who, we heard from the audience a couple weeks ago that kids are depressed, kids are not performing well academically, kids are tearful, kids are miserable. Isn't there something more we could be doing interim to identify those kids who are struggling and to put supports or measures in place? Whether it's an extra phone call home that day from a substitute teacher or an additional teacher, or whether it's, I don't know, I don't have the ideas because I'm not an educator, but it just seems to me that there's an issue that we think could be solved if we went back full time. That's simply not an option right now. but we still have the issue. What are we doing about it? Is there anything more we could possibly do?
So
So I put that out.
I'm so glad you said that, because this is honestly, this is on me, because we did several iterations of this, and the iteration of, okay, what's next, and how do we support and challenge, got dropped. So this is on me. But what we have in place right now is we are working on rolling out an update for parents, which is a Google update, which will give all parents the option to choose to have daily reports or weekly reports on the assignments that the students are submitting. So it gives parents a glimpse in to the life of their child to say, yeah, you have submitted your work or you don't. One of the pain points that we've heard was, I don't even know what my child's doing. Normally, the folder goes back and forth and I know, and they don't have that luxury to see what's going on. So that Google update has happened. We're uploading parent emails into the system this week. And so that hopefully within the next week, that will get rolled out to families so that they can have a better, they won't be able to see necessarily the quality of work that the kids are submitting, because they won't be able to go back and look at it, but they will at least be able to get that check and balance to say, yeah, they submitted it or they didn't submit it. And oh, by the way, here's the upcoming assignments for the week, which is really nice. So it's a more of a management tool, but that's rolling out. The other thing that we're looking to do is pilot some tutoring opportunities. So we have building substitutes that we have in place right now. We're looking to capitalize on that resource and use them in the afternoon, use them as almost like a tutoring source if they're not actually doing the live teaching as a substitute. So trying to capitalize on some of the existing staff we have in place to open up some of those supports for our students. So those are the kind of immediate supports that we're looking to put in place. The long-term supports that I mentioned earlier, but we're looking at what are those options that we can look at as those transitional phases. And so that's something we're evaluating 3 or 4 different ideas here of what that could look like. The administrative team's going through that process right now. And then finally, you talk about the SEL, the social emotional learning. The guidance counselors I know have done a really nice job of providing supports. Dr. Reese, there she is, has done a really good job of tracking that data. Interestingly enough, we have our performance data from our testing of our special education students. We have to do that as a tracking point to say, okay, here's where they are as a benchmark test. And the regression of skills, which we anticipated to be significant, is actually not too bad. So that actually was promising news from the regression of skills for our special education students, but from the social emotional learning side, our guidance counselors are heavily involved. We have our school psychologist and school psychologist intern that has been really heavily involved in working with our students to transition and support those that are in need, getting calls, and the administration, the principals in particular, have been really hands-on in that process. And team,
we've offered individual tutoring sessions for parents as well. So we would actually like to do a session with the parents and help them walk through some of the materials and the instructional activities. And then some parents we do discussions with them as well. We offer them to come in like a Wednesday morning leaders meeting, we sat with them to show them how to do different things on the computers. We open that up. And I know we've encouraged teachers are calling as much as they possibly can to make sure that they're keeping that personal contact and helping everyone, just kind of advance and help them feel better. And I know there's a ton of other things that some of the teachers are doing.
Also to interject, I don't think we're ever going to be satisfied with our level of support to our students. And that's kind of one of the great things about the team. And when I say the team, that's everybody here for Brandywine Heights. We always want to do more. From the beginning of the check-ins, our guidance counselors review that check-in material that the students submit to find out, are there any flags that are going on that we need to check in with some students specifically. We've also partnered with Kutztown University to see if we can get some virtual teaching assistants sent our way to allow our teachers to better connect with the students, to just free up a little bit more of their time to support our students better, to provide some more of those supports. And that list, it goes on and on and on. And so many of our teachers, right here, I constantly hear stories about, the tasks that they do that are way above and beyond, just ways to continue to connect and support students that are in need. But to your point, I don't think we're ever going to stop and be like, oh, we're good enough. It's going to be ongoing to make sure those that are in need receive the support that they need.
Andrew, this is not my idea, I'm just throwing it out there, it was given to me. Why, have we looked into, our high school students currently need volunteer hours to graduate? Why not look into kids that wanna volunteer for our elementary kids and have Zoom sessions?
So we actually, through our middle school student council, is looking at that currently as a way to connect our middle schoolers with our third graders who are in the building. Because in previous years, they've done math tutoring through Mrs. Graber. And our student council is actually working on that as an opportunity for our student council. Since they can't go into the rooms and do in-person tutoring on those days, but that is a possibility, so.
Yeah, because the high school kids need hours anyway, and in the current COVID situation, they can't get those hours, so this would be perfect.
I think one of the biggest pieces I've dealt with my families too is just highlighting the importance of communication. Obviously, with everybody being in different settings, remote, physical, some meetings we're having over the computer, other things we're doing over the phone, just constantly highlighting even the students that if there's an issue, they just have to communicate with that. We're all navigating a situation we've never been in before. Flexibility and grace are the two things we need more than anything in this. So just telling the students, like, if you're struggling at home, I understand that, but instead of just, instead of struggling, you've got to let me know, Mr. Barnhart know our counselors, so that we can then work with the teachers who honestly, I mean, have been phenomenal, but they're not going to know what every student needs, and unfortunately, sometimes you're behind a computer, sometimes you're behind a desk. You're going to have to express what it is you need right now, and I think the more we have those conversations, it's still early on. We're only putting 1 month into this process, and it feels like longer, but our students haven't hit that struggle yet to realize how they can get around those challenges. So I know from my level, just at that secondary level, it's saying, absolutely, I hear you that you're struggling right now. Let's figure out why. Maybe it's because you're not in a routine, because sometimes those assignments come in, they might be to believe you might not be in a great routine. There's other times that maybe it's just really getting yourself in a good daily schedule, and maybe you really are struggling with material. You just need to let that teacher know, because we're also with those smaller classes in an environment now where you can more individually reach a struggling student with something specific, not having sometimes a full class there. So it's really just navigating situations together, and communication. I say it all the time, just make sure you're communicating what you need so we can get you there.
I mean, I'm sitting here listening to all this, and I have 3 little girls that used to love school. And every day, one of my 3 girls sits at the table and cries her heart out because she doesn't get it. And I'm a former teacher. I have every kind of manipulative possible in my house, and I try and I try and I try, and I am still not able to explain the math for them to get it, to explain the different English things to them so that they can understand it. And the last thing I want to do is now go to their teacher, who, when I do get to talk to them, they're on the verge of tears because they're working 60, 70 hours. And I'm not going to say, oh, can you stay on an extra half hour with my daughters because they're really not getting this at all. I think there are so many that are parents that are like me that we don't know where to turn. And I worry, because I am an involved parent, I'm worried about these kids that are off the grid, that I am hearing from elementary teachers that they're supposed to be logging in on Thursday and Friday, they've yet to log in on a Thursday and Friday. And they've called home. And they're great when they're in person Monday and Tuesday, but they get nothing the rest of the week from those kids. And those kids I worry about too. And I see all this positive community feedback in here, and it's really, really not what's going on. And I can't sit here any longer and listen to this because our teachers are struggling and our students are struggling. And like Tom said, I know it may seem like it's never good enough, but it is really not good enough right now.
I have a daughter also who has never once ever had an issue with school, cried every day. And it's same thing. My son sits there and tells me, yep, I've done it all. And, I get an email like, it's simple things, you know, he didn't check in. He told me to check in, and that makes me think, well, what else did he tell me? You know, and I have, you know, I'm lucky to stay home. I run my business from home, but to check in every second, you know, at what point, you know, it is hard. And just to hear, I mean, reading some of these emails, I cried reading emails from parents who don't know what to do. Their kids are crying. Their kids hate everything that's happening. And I know there isn't solutions, but I think we need to make sure that this is open and said out loud, because you can't just say, you know, everyone loves these safety measures. Like, yeah, our safety measures are great. I am not arguing with any of that part of it. It's how we have implemented so many safety issues, and we're doing a great job. But we need to get the kids focused on and figure out what's happening on that.
Because academically, they are struggling, especially the elementary level. I mean, it's, I think, a lot easier for high school and middle school students. But our elementary group, I mean, I have yet to talk to a single elementary parent that is saying this is great.
Just to be clear, I want to make sure that everyone understands, like, this is not our utopian educational design by any stretch of the imagination. This is making the best of a global pandemic in which our options are usually something bad or something horrible. And we're trying to make sure that while keeping safety number one, we provide the best educational opportunities for our students that we possibly can, without truly driving everyone off the cliff. At no time, I think, will you ever hear any of us state that this is the way we want it to be, nor will you ever hear any of us state that it's perfect and it's run just the way we envisioned it. You know, it is a very challenging situation that there really aren't too many additional options that we can play with. There are only so many variables that we can play with to make it better and still keep safety at the forefront.
So how is Schuylkill Valley keeping it safe then for their students to go back? How is Ole keeping it safe? How is Hamburg? I mean, I guess that's where we're looking at it now. Like, if these other districts, what are they doing? What are they doing that we're not looking at?
Praying.
I can't
that
state
they don't
that.
have a lot of cases.
I can't state that what they're doing is safe or not safe, and I certainly don't want to publicly come across as accusatory of anybody else's plan. What we can state is, for Brandywine Heights, this is the plan that we put together, and without a doubt, we're in collaboration with all the other school districts. But everybody comes down at a different place on comfort levels and what's best for the community. And based on the feedback that we've been receiving, we absolutely have two big different sides to our community. We have a side that absolutely wants to go back face to face for all the reasons that you mentioned. And I think I said this publicly, I've never been more conflicted between what I want versus what I think may be right. And when we're talking about potentially gambling on somebody's life, I'm only willing to gamble on my own. And it's extremely challenging when you're making decisions based on the safety of other people. Could we play a probability game? Sure, we could say probably, if we go back face to face full time, we probably won't have any issues. But I never want to be the person standing at the funeral of one of our staff members because I probably was right. And I don't need to go one way too far or the other. I'm just stating the facts of the situation. I tried to stay emotionally dead, focus on the data.
That's why he says that all the time.
I tried to, because honestly, there are so many feelings and emotions that get tied into this. Because not only am I an educator, I'm also a father. I also have two of my own children at home that have struggles with online learning. And we've had those tears, not on my part because I'm emotionally dead, but on their part. And it's extremely challenging. And I want to make sure that I don't ever come across as dismissive that what you're saying is not true. I don't want to paint a rosy picture. I'm just trying to paint a picture. This is what it looks like. This is where we're successful. This is where we're struggling. And that's kind of where we are right now in the midst of this pandemic. When we look at the data, we see that the trend is getting worse before it's getting better. We're also concerned we'd rather have those 2 days than 0 days. And if we go back full-time face-to-face, playing the probability game, the probability of us having at least 2 cases per building, causing a complete shutdown and back to full virtual, is much higher. And then we don't have any of that face-to-face time, which is what we're kind of clinging to right now. We're trying to be in that middle of getting as much time as we can without risking too much. And it is not perfect. And what we're asking of our teachers and our students is tremendous. It's the best we have right now. I yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg.
Well said.
Were there ever options for at least maybe in the elementary, intermediate school to do what the kindergarten is doing?
So again, we've evaluated a whole bunch of different options. That's one of the work we're looking at currently. There's challenges with that. The transportation challenge, cleanliness in between cohorts of students is a major challenge. It's probably the biggest hurdle. And then the other hurdle is, okay, so right now, if there's a COVID case or a quarantine case, those students can work from home remotely. If you do that model, there is no more virtual environment for learning. And so they don't have that opportunity to be connected with their teacher. It would have to be all asynchronous.
The teacher couldn't live stream,
They wouldn't be because they'd be teaching both sessions.
but like while they're at school, like you couldn't have that
That's-
on or something.
That's part of the bandwidth issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's another layer of,
Yeah.
what we're exploring.
Don't you get into legality too, live streaming a session?
You
We
can
just
do it.
passed it. That's why
Yeah, you can do it, but
Okay.
again, it's,
No.
There are things to consider, to your
No,
point.
I know with
Yeah,
students,
and
but.
a lot of different teachers do it too, I think. Like our union was kind of like, ooh, you know, but I'm live every day for 45 minutes.
I'll be happy to take some more time to break down the entire legality. That hasn't been a question that's ever been asked of us at all. So. It'll take about 45 minutes. Is everyone up for that? So to your point, we definitely have been evaluating different options. We're continuing to evaluate because, as I mentioned earlier, I believe there's going to be a point when there's a transition that occurs before we get ours. And I think that's a positive step to get us that transition to get more of that face time. How do we do that safely?
Or increasing the daytime, like the amount of time they're at least in those 2 days or something to give them a little more time.
And that's kind of what we're doing, that pros and cons of, okay, is it feasible? And then, okay, is it worth a complete transition again for what could be a game here? And that's the kind of balance we're playing. We're not ready to give you anything yet in terms of a formal proposal. Here's a couple options, but we're definitely actively engaged in evaluating that. What are the costs associated? What's the benefit? Is there a benefit compared to where we are now?
To me, it was powerful, right? So a whole bunch of folks weighed in with, we're doing this, and we're doing this, and we're doing this. And frankly, I think probably almost all of the things that I heard, I hadn't heard before. You guys live it every day, and so it doesn't feel like newsworthy to share. And also, I think because some of the ideas are fledgling and maybe only half baked right now, you probably hesitate to say anything about it, because then you get people overexcited, and then what happens if you can't deliver or it's too challenging or whatever. I would just encourage you to communicate, to talk more about those little ideas, because if we're getting bombarded, and frankly I haven't checked that email, so I've missed the 21 emails, but if we're getting bombarded with people saying, I want to have my kids back in school, and the answer is sorry, no, for these very valid reasons right now. That's unacceptable to hear a no, but it might be more palatable if we said no for all these reasons. And oh, by the way, if your student needs access to our child psychologist or our counselor or their gym teacher, or, you know, here's a litany of options that you could select. Please reach out to your principal or to your teacher and share, right? And if you're afraid as a parent, if there's any, and I don't mean to say to you, but you made it kind of personal. If any parent is afraid to reach out to their teacher because they know their teacher is overworked, I would suggest that we're not doing something right. Escalate to your principal. And principals, if you've got teachers who are on the cliff, we as a board should know that. And as a district, we should move some levers to help that staff better accommodate. If it means we have to hire 1 or 2 people, you know, me who's always frugal with taxpayer dollars, to me, there's nothing more important right now to invest in but our staff and our kids. So you guys have to tell us if you're hearing this feedback. And if you're not hearing it, I think you've just heard that it's still out there. And maybe you gotta go fishing for it harder, because maybe people are reticent to share for whatever reason. Maybe they feel like personally they don't want to expose their households, or maybe they just don't want to be that mom or that dad, and maybe there's kids out there, like you said, who are being missed. But to me, there's probably some additional things you could do to communicate what you are doing, and maybe to test out some ideas in pockets, rather than feeling like you have to fully bake it and make it perfect before you roll it out. And don't hesitate to come to us and ask for resources. I mean, what better way to spend some dollars than trying to solve these issues right now?
This is to your point, because I think when we look at from that resource standpoint, what is truly important, when we look at what the board spends its money on and where we go. We looked at this year with the daily subs and having them in the building, in the case that we have quarantine cases and we need to have them in play, but in the fact when they're not covering their room, what they can do, as Mr. Potter shared with having them working on some of those tutoring options. We currently have our one building sub here, because our other one is in a long-term role, but that substitute is working with 5 families daily who their kids are at home. So as Mr. Potter was sharing, that we're piloting that, we are seeing that benefit. We've also at the board level expanded the role of the intervention specialist in this building to reach all grade levels in this building. And that intervention specialist is working with families at all grade levels. She's added over 10 more families than she started the year with just over the last few weeks. And we're looking at not just those academic skills, we're looking at those organizational skills and how, and again, organizational is more of the older grades, how they can be more independent, but we're looking at all of those areas as well. I think. I'm sorry?
How do you identify those students?
So typically, for an intervention specialist, it goes a number of ways. One, the parent can request it, but also all of the teaching staff is aware of this is the services that Mrs. Weidenmoyer provides. And in their conversations with families, they're seeing that this is somewhere where that student would benefit. Teachers are rolling that out to the parent. So that is something, and I should just mention Mrs. Weidenmoyer because it also goes down to the elementary staff as well. So those are all avenues that are available. I will say in student check-ins every morning, we are very happy to see that students are being honest. If they are having a bad day or they do need help, they are indicating that in that daily report. And that gives our counselors the chance to get in contact with the family. But I think that also brings up your point of the students who may fall outside of that. And I think that's the biggest fear of everyone in this room, are those students that were having trouble reaching. We haven't gotten all of them, but even just today, we had a family in who we have not had any luck with, and we're getting those students back into the building. So unfortunately, that is a more drawn out process. But I can assure you that none of those families that you were sharing, that it's solely at the classroom teacher level. Those are all things that counselors and all of the building principals and pupil services are involved in to get those families engaged. And unfortunately, it is a much slower process than we want it to be. But
those steps are being taken.
If I could
Is there
just,
anything else besides this intervention specialist? Because that's like what I was thinking with what Liz was saying, like what are some resources for parents out there? Like to me, that's like music to my ears. Is there anything else that
So,
we can get out there that?
so right now, a lot of it is, as Mr. Potter shared, piloting using substitutes or staff, depending on their coverage period, to do those check-ins with families. So as I shared, we're at one building sub right now. In this building, our second one will be coming off of a maternity leave next week. So that will add additional staff here. The other buildings have there too as well. The challenge is, as we do get further into cold and flu season, we may see that staff being utilized more, to cover classrooms. But, those are the two biggest avenues, right now where we are seeing that. But again, I think as Mr. Finch kind of alluded to, where families, we may not see that because the student's work is coming in. We don't know what's going on at home to get to that. So that's where we really want our families to share with us. This is something that I'm struggling with that information. So, and I think that speaks to your point too, when we all do our updates, to say, hey, just a reminder, these services are out here. So maybe your teacher may not have mentioned this to you because they may not be seeing it as much of a struggle as you might be indicating. But these are what's available to reach out to us.
And if all else fails, always reach out to a counselor or myself, because if there's something that, a lot of the things that I've been seeing at elementary level have been case by case scenarios of, some of it is just a technology issue and frustration just solely with the technology, and once they're hooked up, they're good to go. Some it's more the content and the organization. So working with each family individually to see what do you need, how can we support this? Is it a calendar checklist at home that we can say, put this on the fridge, this is helpful to you, that may solve an issue. If it's the social emotional piece that they're just bummed about being home, we have our parent groups and the concerned counseling still coming in addition to our counselors that will provide supports and do that meaningful checking when we do see them, and then schedule times to see the kids virtually. But as far as, back to Mr. Jacobs' point of, until we know when to step in, if you're submitting the assignments and nothing is being vocalized, it is difficult to make. We think everything is okay until we hear otherwise. But we're always here, obviously, to help and make sure that every student is happy and ready to learn.
So do you have just being the building principals, do you have interactions with your teaching staff about their fears, is there time spent with them in this new format?
In a pre-COVID world and in a current COVID world.
Okay.
Absolutely.
One thought I'm having back to the survey suggestion, if and when you get ready to do that, maybe some of these specific examples, again, not to overpromise, but, would your child benefit from tutoring? Do you think your child would benefit from a once a month check-in with a counselor? Would you like to go on a virtual field trip? Like, I'm just sitting here thinking about these 14 high school kids who tomorrow are gonna find out that we're kiboshing their international trip. Well, what can we do for those 14 kids that we know we're delivering really crummy news, and there's nothing that we can do about it in terms of it's the right decision, but what can we do to support them? Because we know it's gonna be a bummer of a day for them tomorrow, or whenever they get home. Do you know what I mean? So in the survey, if you rattled some of this stuff off, to give them, on a scale of 1 to 10, these are the things that I think my kid would find most helpful, or that my family would find most helpful.
Mrs. Walter, you make a really good point from the parent perspective, and I think we all can relate to that. We've all had those similar, and I appreciate you bringing it up because it is the reality of it. We talk logistics, we talk safety, we talk here's why it's working, and then there's a reality of sitting at the kitchen table and doing work. And I think Tom eloquently said it. I don't think any of us are trying to diminish those concerns because those concerns are real and those are happening in a lot of households. I hope the conversation here also did two things. One, let us kind of reposition knowing the concerns of what can we do to support. And also, the team that is here as well, all our staff are completely invested in making sure that this is a process that we can support our families as much as possible. Quick little story, but Miss Kelly drove up to a farm today to do a home visit just to make sure that she could help get the kid get the student online. So it's those kind of things that all of the team here are doing to just make sure that the kids are taken care of. So we are all in this together. I don't want you to feel at all like that we're not understanding or we're trying to be counter to what you're saying, because I get it, I understand it, I feel it in my own house as well. It's just a matter of, again, now I put my superintendent hat on, we have to still get through the next couple phases of looking at the organization of when we can get in. Knowing that's the end goal, what do we need to do so we can provide the supports right now? So we'll continue to take this to heart and look at, we talked about a bunch of stuff today. Communication, I think, of those things is a key piece. And then what other steps can we do to make sure students feel that they have, parents and students have those resources, whether that's additional interventions, tutoring supports, or whatever it might be. We'll take that to heart and absolutely talk about this.
Oh, yes, yes, sir.
Admittedly, this isn't completely thought out on my part, so I don't even know how much it's worth you saying, but with, is it a correct statement that elementary school kids all stay within the same classroom each day? So there's no intermingling like at the high school level, swapping classrooms?
That's correct, yes.
Again, without wasting everyone's time, and for consideration's sake, I have two kids, one's third grade, one's kindergarten, at that age. And this is very opinion oriented, so it's not fact, but to me, the academic and education portion of schooling is, I don't know where the percentage lies, 50-50 or whatever, but the academic goes hand in hand with the social aspect, social interaction with other people. You kind of mentioned sitting at the kitchen table has limited value. It's something, but and then from a parent side of things, of finding daycare options, and risk of kids and statistics on young kids, especially getting the disease and all that kind of stuff. Consideration, again, not very well spoken on it certainly, but it'd be nice to hear those in consideration for getting elementary school kids back, maybe full-time more than the other scenarios. From a kid standpoint, like, if you got a young, fresh mind that's developing education as well as socially with other kids, and then selfishly from a parent standpoint, as a high school kid that doesn't go back to school, I find a babysitter for it's much more self-sufficient than a kindergartner. So I don't know if anyone's mentioned that, and there's no need to go into detail. I can explain further and maybe more well thought out in an email form, but I figured I would just, so I came back everyone else publicly, so.
It's a good thought. Again, it's one of those considerations that we absolutely have looked through. To be completely honest, if we're going to be looking at bringing kids back full time, I'd rather do it in a process that we look at all the students K to 12 and bring them back full time. And so then that layers into, okay, so how does that happen? When does that happen? And when is it safe to do so? We kind of circle back now to, but it's something we had strongly considered. But again, I truly look at it from a K to 12 perspective and say, if we're going to do that, I think we need that as a holistic approach.
Thank you, sir.
Mrs. Eisenhardt?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Wagaman?
Yes.
Mrs. Walzer? Yeah. Mr. Bieber?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yeah.
Mr. Tomasi?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
All right, moving on to personnel report, number 4, and a motion to approve the items under the personnel report.
So moved.
Second.
Were you gonna do that?
And we'll make sure the minutes reflect Mrs.
Mrs.
Eisner. All right, personnel report. It's actually a very quick personnel report. There's 2 items on the personnel report. A1, which is the resignation of a support staff nurse, and then C4C, which is our co-curriculars. There's a couple of minor adjustments to that list. Any questions on the personnel report?
Any public comments? Any board discussion? All right, roll call please.
Mrs. Henry,
Yes.
Mrs. Hume,
Yes.
Mr. Wageman,
Yes.
Mrs. Walliser,
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Carter,
Yeah.
Mrs. Eisenhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Tomassi.
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Okay. Any other business? Okay. Any further public comment before we close?
Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for, we'll do that. All right, any more discussion? Okay, Roman numeral number 6, just have to announce that we did have an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss legal and personnel matters. And that brings me to adjournment at 8:50.
So moved.
Oh, sorry.
Hageman and
Second.
Henry's on the list. Board members, I can just have you hang tight for a second. I am going to introduce our new inductees. Mr. Volker, would you like